Okay, being 6 o'clock, Mike, being 6 o'clock on Monday, January the 29th, we'll call to order the Winooski City Council meeting. Ask that everybody please join us for a pledge of allegiance led by Deputy Mayor Brian Corrigan.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first up tonight is agenda review. This is an opportunity for council to make adjustments to the agenda as set. We got things pretty stacked up. Might be quick here. Quick meeting tonight. Who knows? Any questions or concerns about the agenda from council?
No.
Great. So seeing and hearing none, we will move on to public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address council about something that is not on tonight's agenda. As a reminder, we have agendas in the back. We also really appreciate everybody taking the time to sign in, unless you work here. Any other items that folks would like to address the council about that are not on tonight's agenda? So seeing and hearing none, we'll move on to our consent agenda. We have 3 items on tonight's consent agenda. First, we have the city council minutes from January 22nd, 2018. Also, the warrants ending for January 26, 2018. And then the services agreement that we discussed in the last meeting with Champlain Housing Trust for 57 West Allen Street. I would entertain a motion for the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Nicole, second by Brian. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, motion carries. Consent agenda is approved as presented. City update.
Thanks. Just 2 quick things tonight. As you all know, we had a pretty significant water break on River Street on Saturday. So our crews were on site from about 4 a.m. to about 6 p.m. on Saturday, excavating that. The pipe was about 12 feet down, so it was a pretty big excavation, repairing the leak and then backfilling it. Thanks to the Public Works crews for being out. Luckily, it wasn't too cold. It could have been a real mess had it been below freezing. The road is open, but just for people to be aware, it will not be paved until the asphalt plants open in the spring. So it is going to be unslightly and bumpy for the next couple of months. Second, I brought this up before, but just as a reminder, on February 6th at 6:30 at the UVM Medical Center McClure Conference Room, there's going to be a presentation by CCRPC about the scoping study of the Winooski Burlington Bridge. This is a very early start of a conversation about a long-term project. But if people are interested, please feel free to come out. This is a partnership between Winooski, Burlington, CCRPC, and VTrans as well. So again, that's 6:30, February 6th at the McClure Conference Room at UVM. That's all I got.
Great. I'll now open it up for council members for, excuse me. We'll open up the council for council reports. Start this on the table.
I don't have anything since last week.
Nothing since last week.
Okay. Actually, busy week. Legislators up and running. So Vermont Mayor's Coalition had our annual press conference focused on affordable housing, focused on clean water. We're gonna have Senator Pearson come in at some point and talk a little bit about clean water goings-ons too. I think you guys probably received a message in regards to that. But a lot going on for municipalities this year in the State House, and we'll continue to closely monitor that. And we were successful in getting street team funding for the crisis support team that we voted to approve through on funding bills. So hopefully that continues to progress and does well. So we can have that resource available to our police department and our community. And then Planning Commission had a great meeting. Well, I'll say a lightning fast meeting, but received the economic development plan update in its full text. So I assume that's on its way towards us too. But good discussion there. And as some of you may be aware, we have somebody from the Housing Commission that's also going to seek a seat here. So we'll be looking to interview Housing Commission potential members, and also Planning Commission member interviews are coming this week as well. I think that's all that happened this week.
Community Services had a very well-attended meeting because they were selecting new officials, and everyone wanted to see who was going to be chair, vice chair, and secretary. They also talked about the pool. So there was a great presentation from the architect and engineers about kind of where they're at with the design. Things are coming along. There was some great feedback from people in the audience, and the pool committee is still looking for more membership and help, and their direction is going to be fundraising mainly. So make sure that anyone out there is sending all your great fundraising friends or super rich relatives their way.
Just nothing from the Public Safety Commission realm, but an organization called Everybody Wins, which focuses on nurturing mentors and youth with a focus on reading and literacy, is reigniting their Winooski program. They're going to be having an event this Saturday at Waterworks, including a reading at 1:30 by Winooski's own Craig Mitchell. So if folks want to come out to that and come to the reading, bring their families along and see what that program's all about, they'll be there.
Awesome.
May I interject one thing since you brought up the EDSP? So the Economic Development Strategic Plan recommendations will be coming to you at next week's meeting. They were not brought to you tonight because there is a CCRPC, Regional Planning Commission, meeting tonight on the cost of developing affordable housing. So Heather is there with actually a quorum of our Housing Commission. So because Heather couldn't be here, you'll get that next week. And thank you to the Housing Commission for engaging at the regional level about this conversation.
Yeah, it's great. The CCRPC is holding that as kind of like a educational session on it, which is cool to see. It's great. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to our regular items. First up tonight, we have approval with the consideration of a letter of support for low-income housing tax credit application for a mixed income development project at 268 East Allen Street.
So I'll invite up Tom Getz, who is the developer on this project, to give you all an overview. And just as the mayor read, to be clear about what is before you tonight is solely the consideration of a letter of support for a low-income tax credit application. You're not actually approving the project as a whole. You're supporting the project with a letter of support if you so choose. But I'll turn it over to Tom.
Thank you. Yes, and that's it's Tom Getz, Green Mountain Development Group, and this part of the process of developing affordable housing and coming to City Council, and I've had a lot of conversations with Jesse, and just it's a very important part of the process is making sure that the city is on board and that we have a project that folks feel like is a good fit. And so it's a completely non-binding letter of support where, it doesn't have any impact on our permits or anything like that, but it just helps us with the next stage in the process, which is applying for low-income housing tax credits and showing that we have a project that meets with what the folks in the city feel like they want to see. So just give a quick overview of sort of our company, who I am, and a little bit on the project, and then just happy to answer any questions. Anything I can answer tonight, we'll do that. And just because we're seeking a letter of support tonight doesn't mean this is the end of the conversation. It's going to be ongoing, and we want to continue to do what we can to make this the best project possible. So Green Mountain Development Group, we are based out of South Burlington. We've been developing affordable housing for 20 years in Vermont, New Hampshire, and New York. Currently, we manage about 1,300 units. About 800 of those, a little more than 800 we own. It's a mix of senior and family projects. So we've got South Burlington's the closest one that we own and manage. The Great Cedars here in Winooski is another one that we just took management on. We don't own that, but that's another senior building, and we've got all throughout the state, other family and senior, both in our development and management portfolio. So the project here, it's at 268 East Allen, and I have the maps, but I don't know if you guys have that in front of you, so you can see where the project is. So what we're looking at is 39 units of family housing, a true mixed income where 12 of the units are going to be market rate, 27 of the units are tax credit affordable to individuals with making less than 60% of the area median income. And then of those affordable units, another 4 are going to be directly targeted at homeless or at risk of homeless. And at the time I submitted this application, we'd been talking to several different organizations about the best way to make that work. We now have our letter of intent signed with COTS. So the way that that's going to work is they are going to, through their programs, find residents that they think are going to be a good fit for the units. If one comes available, we start with their waiting list and they'll propose residents to us if they have somebody. If not, we would go off of our list, and then the next one that came available, that was part of the agreement, they would move somebody in who had a voucher or other means of support so they could afford these units. Since the 27 tax credit units, they'll be affordable at 60%. So they'll need some extra support typically for a homeless person to be able to afford to get in that. So that's the important part of COTS being in this partnership, is being able to provide folks that have vouchers. And then once they're in and the process of getting somebody into those units, they have folks called housing navigators, is what they call their supportive services providers, that will help with anything from application fees, making sure that the housing is the right fit, helping once the folks are in there to, whether they have problems, paying their rent, support with their planning, just all the aspects of COTS current programs they'll be bringing to the 4 units that are at this project. So that's kind of the overview. You've seen in your packet the design, and that is working its way separately through the permitting process with the city, but happy to answer questions on that. The timing that we're looking at is we have a tax credit application that's due actually Friday, so we'll submit that tax credit application. Awards come out in April or May. If we get the financing, this is the major component of it. We'll have a permanent loan. There's a few other sources, but the tax credits are the major thing that makes this project go. And we've developed numerous tax credit projects all around the state, plus New Hampshire and New York. So we're very familiar with sort of how it goes. And if we get the credits, we want this project to happen this year. So it would be awards in May, start the process of moving towards closing construction, which would be August, September, but it's all contingent on a very, very competitive tax credit application round. We've already had several sit-downs with the Vermont Housing Finance Agency, who allocates the credits, and we know it's going to be competitive, but we've also gone through this project in detail with them, and this is a really good project. It meets all of their top criteria for what they're looking for to see in terms of being mixed income. It's in a neighborhood development area. It's got a true mix, where all the way from market units to supportive services, service enriched for the homeless. So we're really excited about the project. We think it's got a good shot, and with your support and the support we've had from the city, that'll only improve it. So happy to answer any questions I can.
That's great. And I think key, going back to Jesse's comment, is it's to this point because they've met zoning standards. So this is a design review, charrette. It's really looking at the tax credit application, purpose of housing, and ensure that council is comfortable supporting tax credit applications. In the future, we could be put in a position, it's entirely possible, where we end up with 3 or 4 different properties applying for tax credits at one time, at which point in time we'd have to think about whether to sign on that. I just use it as a pretense for the future. So, but having sat down with developers before too and looked at this project, walked away feeling really confident that it, coming on the heels of last week's conversations, checks a lot of boxes in terms of what we're going after. And really from an innovation standpoint, to see blending of market rate and subsidized units, and then supportive for something like homeless initiative too, I think is, personally find really exciting. And I know that was reflected in the planning commission meeting too. Questions, comments for Tom? Or?
I think the timing of the proposal is good, given the conversation we had last week, and I like that the letter references our strategic vision statement and the kinds of conversations that we've been having. So thank you for that. I know that we approved another application for a different project on East Allen Street, but that was not this same
It was a
credit
sales
program.
tax reallocation. That was for, those were for downtown tax, the downtown tax
Okay,
credit.
so that's not an example of a competitive application, they're separate programs.
It is actually competitive, but it's, separate.
It's a separate
Yes.
competition.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you, that was my question.
I think it's really exciting to see this, echoing on the heels of the robust conversation we had last week. I also do really appreciate the innovative partnership in regards to ongoing supports for individuals who are placed in housing in that homelessness alleviation initiative. So, thank you.
Any questions, comments, concerns?
That's great.
Great. Any questions, comments, concerns from the public? Okay, so seeing and hearing none, I entertain a motion for approval of the letter of support for the LIHTC credit application for mixed income development project at 268 East Allen Street.
So moved.
Motion by Nicole, second by Brian Corrigan. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate
you
the
very
time. And as I
much.
said, happy to talk to anybody that wants to discuss the project in more detail after. So thank you very much.
So I do actually have one criticism.
Yes. Write it down.
So
Don't worry, he's already-
right now, you've got 268 East Allen Street, and on the plans it says new apartment building.
On the plan set that you have, it will not say new apartment building on the
Can we
building.
get
I
a
promise.
sneak peek of what the,
In terms of the actual, what it will actually be named, we don't have the name decided
Okay,
yet.
all right,
I don't want to announce it. I promise it won't be new apartment building.
It's not gonna be Leonard
I was
apartment.
gonna say, it's the Mary Ann
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your work. Okay,
That is not going to be your legacy.
and being past 6:15, we will open up the public hearing that we have scheduled to start at 6:15. We have two items on tonight's public hearing schedule. We have a public hearing to receive comment on FY19 general fund budget, including the capital plan, to present to the voters. And we also have a public hearing scheduled to receive comment on the bond vote for improvements at the wastewater treatment plant. So we'll open first by opening public comment for item A under public comment, which is the public hearing to receive comment on the FY19 general fund budget. Okay. Nope. Anybody on that side of the room want to say anything?
Cricket, cricket, cricket.
That's okay. Yeah. All right. So we have before us in our public hearing documents.
So I can speak to that. So what you have before you and what the public has available to them is the budget documents that are on the website. So those are available in two places. If you go to the website to city budgets, the proposed budget is linked there for FY19. And then additionally, if you go to the council folder, meetings and agendas folder on the website, linked under city council, you'll find all of the presentations presented to the public over the last 2 months.
Beautiful. Okay. So in the last budget session, there was a lot of really productive discussion. I think both in terms of setting some benchmarks, but also in outlaying to staff what we wanted to see in a more structured manner than maybe in past years, where we could actually be presented with what could be potential final models based off of feedback from council. There were a couple premises recounting what folks wanted to see. Number one, the amounts, right? How much we were looking at. The first amount that we discussed was the 1.91 threshold. And then the second was the 2.1 something threshold. Mine's getting a little blurry, but 2.16 I think it was when we were looking at the sheet the other day. So staff went back, sharpened pencils, and built the models that we have before us tonight off of those items. Jesse, I don't know if you want to just kind of talk through just quickly the 6 ones. I mean, just the one sentence
Sure. So you also have another agenda item later on tonight to speak about these 6 scenarios. But what you have before you is, and also in the council packet, and council also has it by Excel if they would like to play with it, is 3 scenarios at a either at a 1.9% tax rate increase or under, and then 3 scenarios at a 2.15% tax rate increase or under. I will tell you that, so the leadership team went over different scenarios to reach these recommendations. The first one listed in each column is our recommended scenario, but you have the ability to pick and choose from this menu as you'd like. All of the scenarios do include several key things. So each scenario does include the 3 full-time staff people in the city clerk's office. Each scenario does include full funding of the community outreach team partnership with the Howard Center. Each does fully fund the Community Justice Center and the municipal match for that Department of Corrections grant. Each scenario does fully fund the Public Works Director position. And finally, each scenario, each scenario fully staffs the library as well, and each scenario contemplates reduction in about $30,000 in the police salary and benefits line as a result of 3 of our senior leadership within Public Works, or within the police department, retiring or passing away, quite sadly. So because we have very senior staff leaving city employment and modeled out what that would look like under our contractual obligations to bring on new staff, we were able to find some savings. I did decide to put before you scenarios that reinvest some of that savings back into the police department. Because we will have a new leadership team, the chief and I believe it's really important to build up the training line and ensure that they have the leadership training they need to continue the great services. So it's a net of $25,000 savings. So then with the delta there between all of those things, we added back in with the leadership budget. And then to meet your goals, you have several scenarios that allow you to do that. Many of them, in listening to the council conversations at the last meeting, several of them add back in some general fund appropriation for the Thrive Director at different levels of funding. We've also considered, based on the conversation at last week's meeting, some additional investment in the pool training line, which is training and professional development for all staff. There's a scenario in which we add back in the 2 electric vehicles to ensure that we're energy efficient and most effectively using our staff time. And then there is a scenario in which we add back in funding for the Winooski Legacy campaign, which is what will come out of the marketing and branding initiative. And I believe that captures, and then there's one additional scenario in which we increase but not fully fund the Winooski Parks District appropriation. So again, and you'll see in each of these 6 scenarios, not only each of those called out individually, but the gray box at the bottom showing you what the resulting FY19 estimated tax rate would be, the percent change to the current year tax rate, the total general fund expenditures, and I will note that that's without the OCC, because we're moving over that OCC, that's 300,000 plus to the general fund budget. So to be able to compare apples to apples, it's reflected without that, and therefore the percent change expenditures FY18 to FY19. Finally, on this, in your materials and on this spreadsheet, you also have the full menu of items that staff has recommended we cut or add to the budget, and the ability for you all to play with those scenarios and make them your own if you would like. And I'm happy to talk through one specifically if you would like me to do that.
Okay, so given this is the hearing portion, we're going to deep dive into it. I think, thank you for doing that. Sorry we didn't really talk about that beforehand, but I think it's important to have some context for the hearing in case the public would like to give feedback as to where the budget stands in terms of numbers. So I'll open up first on the public hearing, and again, keep in mind that we're gonna come back and actually approve the actual proposed budget in a few minutes. But we'll first open up the public hearing to receive comment on the FY19 general fund budget, including the capital plans presented to voters. Any comments, questions from council?
This is awesome. Thank you for doing this. This must not have been easy for you to peel out and figure out for us.
Oh, we're getting ready to get into it too. Any questions or comments on the public hearing portion from the public? Okay, so seeing and hearing none, we will move on to the second. I don't think we have to vote to close that public hearing item. I think we just move to the second one. So we'll move to the second public hearing item to receive comment on a bond vote for improvements at the wastewater treatment plant. I think just as a, oh, go ahead.
I was going to give a summary.
Oh, yeah, no, please.
So this, I have included here in the packet, it's also on the website, the presentation that was done on January 8th about this project with the engineering details. So this project is a general obligation bond that we are recommending consideration by the voters for $1.45 million. That includes the update to the headworks facility at the wastewater treatment plant. That is the grit and solids removal system before the waste stream gets to the treatment plant. So it's automating that process, and then also building a garage that will provide better care for our equipment over the winter months. That's the summary.
Yeah, and comprehensive presentation available a couple weeks ago online, CCTV. Just as a reminder to folks, what we're doing is utilizing expiring debt to take on new debt. So this is actually a net no impact to the taxpayer. We're just continuing to utilize current debt capacity and replacing it with another project, which is good from our perspective. I think that's the way we feel it's important that we really start using debt repeatedly.
Or $5 million.
Right.
This resolution has been vetted by legal counsel, and it's there for your consideration.
Great. Questions, concerns from council? Spent a lot of time on this one. Questions or concerns from the public? Yes, sir.
Just a question, how long are these bonds, how long are we committed on these projects?
It's a wonderful question.
It's a 20-year bond.
They're both 20-year bonds? And this one's 20?
Yep.
And it doesn't, the terms don't start until completion, substantial completion of project, correct?
Correct.
So it'll actually be a couple of years before it hits the bid, which is good because we're going to expire that other debt. Any other questions, concerns from the public? Good. So seeing and hearing none, I would entertain a motion for approval of the resolution in advance of a $1.45 million general obligation bond vote for improvements to the wastewater treatment plant.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Brian Corrigan, second by Brian Sweeney. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries. Now move on to item C, approval for use of $121,673.55 in FY17 fund balance.
So we talked about this at your last meeting, but thought it was important to actually take the vote on this before you vote on the budget, because these are funds that are needed to make other decisions in the budget work. So just as a reiteration from last week's meeting, our current unassigned reserves balance from FY17 is $517,000 and some change. And we are requesting 3 uses of those in this budget. The first is a $100,000 one-time down payment for the fire truck. The second is $15,673.55 for CIP funding to make our capital improvement plan whole for the year. And then the final is $6,000 for the municipal planning grant match. One thing I will call out that I believe is different from prior years is we are not going through a process to allocate out all of the reserves at this time. We're simply using what we need to strategically support the budget. We will, with these decisions, we will still have $395,000 remaining in FY17 unassigned fund balance.
Great. Again, I think this is one that this is more than a formality, you're voting on it, but one we spent quite a bit of time on.
Absolutely.
Concerns or questions from council? Concerns or questions from the public? So exciting use of funds and one that will serve the community well. I can see John smiling. He's got a little extra smile over there.
He's going fire truck shopping.
He's gonna blow a rotator cuff out, wax in that thing, make sure it stays shiny. I like it. Okay, so with that, I entertain a motion for approval of the use of we'll say over $121,500 in FY 17 fund balance.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Eric, second by Brian Corrigan. Any further discussion?
Sorry, do we need to say the amount?
You probably should.
So you could just say as proposed by
Friendly
staff.
amendment?
$121,673.55.
I saw that look on Angela's face also. We have a proposed adjustment to the amendment accepted by the motioner. Will you accept a friendly amendment?
Yes.
Yes.
Second or any issues?
Yes.
Okay. So seeing and hearing none, the motion is amended to include the actual balance. Any further concerns or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, motion carries. Sorry, Angela. Item D, approval of the FY19 budget, including the capital plan to present to the voters. So I think Jesse set it up.
So just again, these are the scenarios before you. The only additional part I didn't mention was there was a question at the last meeting about what CPI currently is, and it currently December to December is 2.1%. And then again, happy to talk out or through any scenarios, and Angela's here to live edit anything you would like to do with other ideas.
Yeah, I went back and watched the last meeting, and for a group, starting that at like 9 o'clock, you were all remarkably lucid and
I don't know.
really.
Lisa, did you know about
Ready to
remarkably?
stay.
Yeah, you were fighting for your life over that. That's true.
No, I think most of the concerns delineated were in some fashion or another addressed here in these proposals, which was the request in the, I mean, we spent a lot of time last week kind of hashing out and drawing the lines of distinction with where folks felt there were important issues at hand and potential concerns. So I guess with that, I'm going to turn back towards folks and say, there's kind of two steps to the process here. There's one, I think is there anything particularly, compelling on another list that anybody wants to talk about right now? Because interjecting that in at this point in time would be really important. And two, my inclination for this conversation at the expense of perhaps one set of these proposals versus another is to kind of see very quickly if folks have kind of settled on an amount you're comfortable with, and trying to talk through what those budgets then look like if we've got a majority that leans one way or the other, with again the opportunity for conversations to come up about those singular items. I do want to acknowledge that I failed in last week's meeting to bring up an issue that a community group had asked me to bring up, and there was an exchange in regards to potentially adding hours to senior center staff. And I promised that group I'd bring that up last week, and I failed to do so. So I wanted to acknowledge that tonight. I'll share the response that I had sent back to the group was certainly happy to bring it up and have it be something that the council's aware of that you've sent along, but also want you to be aware that we've done some investing in staffing and operations there a number of years leading up to this, and it's really important from my perspective, I think from our collective perspective, that when groups like that are being served by city department have requests like that they work really closely with staff to craft how that request fits into sort of the strategic plan of the department and how we're delivering services and offering folks things. And at this point in time, that wasn't part of the proposal that came to us. You know, I'm obviously pretty reticent to bring forward something that's not even on these cutter ad sheets out of the blue. Don't think that's a particularly healthy way for us to, at this point in time in the budget, to be operating, but wanted to put that on folks' radar in case you're asked about it later too, that, you know, we heard that, but it's not something that in this year's budget maybe had risen up unless somebody has a deep concern about that now. So I guess I'll start by saying folks who had strong feelings about how particular items were being handled. You know, the administrative staffing's been kind of a central topic too. Curious if folks feel like that's been addressed in some of these proposals. Also, the Thrive director was a several conversation point from the last conversation, and then last week's conversation, as was some of the training funds and support for training opportunities and what those looked like. And then the city cars also came up in a number of those cross conversations as well. So kind of curious, starting off, if there's anybody who feels like at least one of these proposals doesn't fit their need, fit what they kind of came into looking for resolution to some of those items we discussed last week and in general.
To take it in the positive, there's not, I mean, there's one that I like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I think what we're trying to figure out here is there anything else that anybody wants to bring in out of left field or off that list, or does are your needs met by one of these proposals, or do we need to go through and see if there's anything else that needs to be adjusted or put on one of these lists?
Yeah, I personally don't have a need to bring any wild cards into the mix at this point. I think these are really, I thought it was really great to be able to see these scenarios side by side like this. This is like very new, and I think it's extremely transparent, and I really like just even the format of it. Just being able to see these options side by side is really helpful. So no, I don't have a need to bring anything from outside the scenarios that were presented, but you know, from where I sit, I really think that first scenario meets a lot of the conversation that we had, you know, bringing some back into Thrive, the additional police training, and then kind of keeping what those additional kind of like add and restore pieces were that I think were really the base of the conversation that we were having. So that's where I'm throwing my support.
We felt comfortable about the general fund percentage of the Thrive directly. You can see that kind of working itself out in terms of contribution of time and work towards general fund. Otherwise, we wouldn't have got that proposal, but just getting those head shakes from everybody that feels good and settled. Awesome. Sorry, Brian.
No, it's okay. I was leaning more towards scenario number 2 in the orange. I guess, is it the first one orange too? Yeah, that one's orange too. So scenario 2 under the 2.15.
Yeah.
Is that what that says? I can't really read that.
Yeah.
Um,
So the green.
huh?
Say team green.
Team green,
team
yeah.
blue.
Team green.
Oh, I see. It's
I
scenario
think-
1, scenario 1, scenario 2,
Right,
scenario
right.
2.
So
Gotcha.
up and down on one column is
Gotcha.
the
On top left.
1.9%, and up and down on one column is the 2.15%.
Right. I'm in scenario 2 of the 2.15, or team green as Seth calls it. I thought bringing a little more of the Thrive salary back to the general fund seemed more appropriate after our conversations last week. For me personally, and of course, adding back in the police training is extremely important. So.
And just from a programming standpoint, is there, in your mind, a result, a differentiating result in terms of time spent in programming provided between accepting a model that has 15% of Thrive director time in GF versus 33%, what the functional impact of that looks like on the ground.
So I think what we're looking to see from you all is your comfort and value of having the general fund subsidize a special revenue fund. So from my opinion as the kind of custodian of the taxpayer, implementing the policy you set for the taxpayer dollars, if we're going to fund the Thrive Director at 33%, unless you take a strong stand that that's solely to subsidize a program, I would be looking for that position to provide more general fund open access program to all residents in Winooski, and that could look like a variety of things. That could look like expanded stakeholder relationship building with providers and training providers. That could look like more story hours at the library offered directly to young families. That there's a whole plethora of what that could look like. And without strong guidance for you that really this general fund subsidy is solely to support Thrive programming in the schools, then Ray and I would start working on what does that outside of solely Thrive service delivery look like. Or alternatively, you can say to us, nope, we're comfortable with that subsidy going solely to support those families who are receiving Thrive services.
Okay. So that's good. I think that helps differentiate between, those two, especially green 1, green 2, and green 3. Nicole?
Well, I guess what I'm not clear is, the extent to which, so 2015 versus 25 versus 33, that would, I'm interested in minimizing risk to families of rate increases. And so is the risk of rate increases greater or impacted by the level of general fund support? Or is it purely a matter of Kirsty's time?
So that's a good question. So I think objectively, the least risk to the ratepayers of Thrive is to fund as much of her salary in the general fund as possible. Having said that, there are a lot of things that go into rate setting. So solely increasing salary allocations isn't the only thing that would impact. There's a way that we could minimize the general fund allocation and still hold rates the same, in looking to recruit more families to participate, in looking at other sources of funding.
Right.
They're looking at minimizing other costs. There are other things we can do to hold the rate harmless, but certainly for that direct question, the thing that would minimize the risk the most is put as much of her salary as possible in the general fund and subsidize it.
Right. I guess if we were gonna, I'm not sure 15% is enough to minimize the risk that I have expressed concerns about. And the message I would want to send is that this is intended to subsidize the program, and I wouldn't want the director's time being spent doing other programs around the city that, I don't know, that feels a little bit loose to me.
Can you remind us of, on the spot question, but the current reserves on Thrive?
Maybe I have it here. So at the end of FY17, it was 97,792. Now we are using some of that in FY18. Was slightly under 100,000.
No matter what level we use, the information you said, we still have to dip into, even if we go to 33%.
Even if we go to 33, we're still dipping into reserves this year.
Right. So that, for a model where we're asking it to ramp up, that is an alternative. I mean, the fact that the program does have reserves, that's kind of the safe catch for this year. So theoretically, you could build in, if you set on 15 or 25% or 33%, whatever it is, it's not the only stabilizing factor that we're interjecting into that, because they have reserve to pull from to at least keep the programming going for a year that could potentially allow for additional adjustment. And to measure whether the proposed increase that's being floated in terms of numbers is realistic or not.
Right, I mean, I think I have questions about that. I don't know how many. So I guess what I would prefer to do is fund the position at the level it's been funded, with the expectation that the time is spent building the program. So we're not taking the funding away before the program's been built.
Yeah, from a fund accounting perspective, if Fred ever watched this conversation, he would also been back at us though and say, if it's coming out of the general fund, it should be supporting general programming, not a special fund.
The auditors wouldn't make that kind of a comment because they are rolled together for financial reporting purposes.
Yeah, okay. But theoretically,
Theoretically,
you know,
if it was trying to be a self-supporting program, they would make that argument. But right now, we are rolling it together with the general fund because we do not consider it to be a self-supporting program.
Because it isn't.
yeah.
It is lumped in with all other community services programs as well. Thrive is the closest to being self-supporting, other than the community gardens.
Right. Any other thoughts and scenarios?
I mean, I'll start off by saying that I'm fully comfortable with 2.15%. That doesn't make me blink for a second. It lines up with, I mean, just baseline cost of living increase, and is, I think, below what most people expect natural appreciation of cost of services to be on an annual level. So, from my perspective, that's fair. The Thrive position, I think we're already taking a staged approach to the increase. So I'm inclined to, support the concept of 15% of the time being there and putting some pressure back on us next year to really look at that program and understand how it's cash flowing. And it, if we're proposing, large increase, it hurts to take some money out of the general fund this year and then build reserves for that off the back of it. Also makes me feel better that we've got reserves there. I like adding the electric cars back and giving staff that flexibility to have those. I think it's a nice service to have, and we pulled gas cars that, to remind people of the justification, that had tons of maintenance costs and used a bunch of fuel off the road in order to use those. And I'm worried that we're gonna end up back using those vehicles or those types of vehicles. I like that we're adding the police training back in. I think that's really important. I think all those items, I won't go one by one. And I also think, frankly, that the Winooski Legacy campaign is something worth supporting. I think we're coming up on 100 years old, and that's not something that we should take lightly as a community. I think it's something that we've underspent on for a really long time, is promotion of ourselves and of our accomplishments as a community. And I think finding $5,000 for something like that, that's going to have a great impact for the community, that's really worthwhile.
So what's the legacy campaign exactly?
So, and I apologize that these are not lining up well for you to hear about them. So the marketing, you've heard Heather give updates on the marketing and branding initiative. So one of the threads coming out of that initiative is to coalesce our marketing around what we're calling the Winooski Legacy campaign, which is an effort over the next 5 years leading up to our 100th birthday to tell the story of who we are, from the economy standpoint, from the human standpoint, from the cultural organization standpoint, from individual stories, from family stories, and really put how we market ourselves, not just as a city government, but as a city as a whole, all of our institutions, under that umbrella of getting ready to celebrate our 100th birthday. So the idea of this $5,000 is seed money to make that happen, whether it's convening a group that works for the next 5 years to put together that plan, to marketing materials, to technology to support storytelling around who we are and what our legacy is. Essentially just put some resources towards the kickoff of that initiative.
So does it make more sense to put $5,000 in a general fund budget rather than just take 25 grand out of the reserves of community economic development? I mean, it's gonna sunset in 5 years, right? So this would be something that would get removed. We wouldn't continue this supporting this after the 5 years, after the 100th birthday, or whatever you want to call it. So does it make more sense to not have that come out of to just be a line item in the budget? Would it make more sense to just have $25,000 come out of like the reserves for the community and economic development? I mean,
Or
there's
the unassigned
still large
reserves.
reserves there, right? And then doesn't just need to be I mean, again, it's, adding it in for something that we know is only in the last 5 years. I don't know. Seems like there's
That
different
definitely
ways to support that. I don't know.
Yeah, we're trying not to budget to use reserves. But.
Well, you have
No,
a
but
thing,
it's a
but I mean,
one-time
it's a
expense or a
marketing
limited
campaign,
expense.
right? Like it's, we
I
did it
understand.
for the marketing campaign too, like that's how we paid
That
for
is how we
that.
paid for that.
So I don't know. I mean, it's a small dollar amount, but again, I mean, I like to argue about pennies.
Realize I talked to Eric without looking down at that end of the table.
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel similarly in the same boat as Nicole around the Thrive Director position. And I don't know, I think it's also, it's an opportunity to make a statement from us that this is a program we're invested in seeing succeeding as the program builds and grows towards independence. I think of the scenarios, scenario 2 under the 2.15% increase is probably the one that most closely aligns for me. But I could say I do really value, so I really like the additional police training ad, but I also think it's important we invest in training for city staff across departments as well. So the additional pooled training is something I feel really strongly about, and not looking at the exact numbers. I don't know if there is a similar difference between the Thrive Director at 33% as opposed to 25%, if that might wash out with the money needed for additional pooled training.
Well, let's see, it'd be
Scenario
7,000.
3, right?
Okay, so
I mean,
25 versus,
Yeah, that's
Somewhere
scenario
there.
3, Eric.
yep, okay, yep.
Did you just change your own mind?
I did, yeah. No, the numbers did it for me. But I feel comfortable with scenario 1 as well, of those.
I guess I was persuaded that we didn't need those 2 electric vehicles at some point during the process, so now I'm not persuaded that we need to put them back in, particularly at the expense of maybe a larger investment in Thrive. And I do think Brian Sweeney, Counselor Sweeney, raises a good point about the legacy campaign being, whether it's better to bake that into the general fund budget or treat it as a limited one-time expense and use either unassigned reserves that we just talked about or from the Community Economic Development Fund. So I guess I'm leaning towards number 3.
Do you want to comment on electric vehicles?
So just as our thought on that, this was part of our cut when we were looking to cut about $260,000 out of the budget. So we were, really trying to get to all those places where we could nickel and dime before we got to cutting positions. So that's where it resulted from. Our operational thought was that we have 4 now. Code enforcement and community services both use theirs to a large degree, so those would stay. The general city hall EV and the public works EV would likely go away. The impacts of that are the community services one will likely be pulled into supporting community justice center, to supporting public works, so will be less available to them. And for the rest of us who need to use cars that then won't have access, will be using our own cars and potentially using mileage reimbursement. So to Seth's point, I do think there will be an impact to putting more gasoline fuel hours onto the road than we currently do. But it may be a more effective solution than having vehicles that are sitting here for hours at a time that we're not using them. That make sense?
Yeah, I guess I'm okay, and it makes a certain degree of sense that they're not gonna be in constant use. But what would be worrisome, I think, would be patterns of inactivity that really make it hard to justify having 4, So I understand there are times when, yes, 4 is gonna be very useful, but if we're not using 4 regularly to support city operations, I don't know. I don't know that we have a log of use, that you've tracked to see.
Yeah, I guess. I just think the point is that they were targeted as a cut as something that it's kind of like, do we want to cut this? No, but if we're down to the wire.
I mean, they are in if we are going with a 2.15% increase, they are in our preferred alternative.
Yeah.
We do think there is a use to putting them back in. Having said that, these are all options for you to consider.
I could be persuaded to go with option 1.
I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, Seth, on the legacy campaign, the comments that Brian brought up.
I think that there's an argument for that. I think we don't build padding in our budgets. We just don't here. We don't build contingencies like a lot of other communities do. We don't put, so we would be, we haven't deeply, gone into the details of that proposal and that line of thinking. It's come up quite a bit at the planning commission level, but I guess to me, as much as possible, if we know there's going to be an expense, we should be voting to put it in a budget and not saying we'll deal with that with reserves as much as possible. But I respect the fact that it's a short run, and if people are really passionate about that, I can't really argue against that. I think it's good to build in. I think if they had that $5,000 in there, I wouldn't see an issue with them converting that eventually to just general promotional funds down the road. Because I think we need to be spending money on that and have some soft play in those budgets. It's my personal view on it. So, but in terms of the structural piece of it, Eric, there's not really an argument against the point that historically we have done that. We have said, okay, let's just all agree that the next 3 years we're going to approve general fund reserve or general fund excess funds towards it. So.
Right, but we know, and we know the Thrive program is a program that we're going to continue and that we need to support. I don't know. For me, I don't want to second guess the recommendations or the preferences of staff with respect to the electric vehicles, but I do have concerns about keeping Thrive Director down to 15%, and I wonder whether we could replace the legacy campaign investment with a bump on the Thrive.
Well, if you rolled that in, you would hit 16,000, so you'd be at roughly 22%
22% or something like that.
Yeah, get more in the 20% range, theoretically.
So at the risk of making Angela's live editing head explode, so we could alter scenario 2.15, scenario 1,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
to bring the Thrive director back at 25%. We need about a little over $6,000 to do that. So we could put that at 25%, eliminate the legacy campaign, keep the electric cars, and put the additional pool training down to 2,000, and I believe meet the budgetary goals.
Yeah.
We might want to recess for 5 minutes and let Angela do that.
And you're doing that though because just frankly, it's easier to account in relative whole numbers from
It's the math I have in front of
from
me.
a percentage standpoint than
Right.
it is just to move 5,000 around, just to clarify, right?
Right.
Okay. I want to, if you guys don't mind, just because there's been a lot back and forth, we try to take a pause in these sometimes and just bounce out and see if there's any comments from the public. This will not be the last public comment session, but given all the conversation that's taken place, unless anybody has anything they want to say real quick, and just turn it over to see if there's any public comment, because we're starting to move towards, I'll say, not adding anything out of left field in, not adding any additional items under the cut and restore list. I'm hearing the group pretty focused on what's in front of us in terms of the key ads that have kind of been the long running narrative throughout the budget process. So this is a chance I want to open that up before that feels like that conversation's moved on and passed. Yes, Mr. Mahoney.
Regarding the electric cars, there's currently 2 that the city uses, is that correct?
Four.
4. And you are looking to retain those or to add more?
Either retain or cut 2 is sort of what's on the table tonight.
So if you're looking at the price of gas, it has been changing, and in all likelihood, they anticipate that that will continue. I don't know if it's going to be so dramatic that it's going to be an issue, but that's certainly something down the road people expect to go up another 25 cents a gallon or whatever it is during the year. And the other aspect of this is just simply the fact that you're trying to look at this as an environmental situation. And I think that if you're trying to project an image of the city, that we are trying to look forward. And if this is just one simple way of doing that, I would encourage you to continue to use these cars. If in fact, as Nicole was saying, we are using these efficiently, are they just sitting in the yard or in the parking lot, not doing anything for an extended period of time? I don't know how many miles you use them for on an annual basis, but you can look at that cost on an annual, on a mileage basis compared to routine maintenance. There are other vehicles that you use for just your regular maintenance, gasoline, as a way to compare. But in the end, you have, no matter what the difference is that environmental component. And I think that the city, over the last several years, has had a dramatic change in the perspective that people have of our city. And I think that this, even though that's not particularly what they're looking for, it's just an example of the fact that Winooski has changed and is improving and moving forward and advancing. And I think that's just a simple way, even if there is some cost above and beyond the actual value, there's some value above and beyond the cost. And I think that that's something that people should be.
Well said.
So I guess that brings up a question I have following up on that. So, I mean, the discussion is there are the two that are on the potential cut list are primarily used by, generally here and at Public Works, not used as frequently as the community services and the code vehicle. If instead of 2, 1 was cut, would it still create the situation potentially where there would create additional stretch on the one being used for community services? Logistically, is that too hard between the 2 different locations? Because I'm guessing the other vehicle is kept up at Public Works and one's kept here at City Hall? Or...
So it would be definitely a step in the right direction to have 3 instead of 2. So that would be helpful. in that case, what I would recommend, having not vetted this with our team yet, is that we would keep the public works one, because it's primarily used by the director or the engineer, who bounce back and forth between the garage and City Hall quite a bit. The director has an office here and an office there. And then the community services vehicle would be expanded to use by the Community Justice Center and by other leadership staff here at City Hall.
Thanks.
Sorry, I know we're kind of real timing it, but what would 20% of the Thrive? What would 20% of the Thrive look like?
Yeah, I mean, I actually like the additional pool training. Why?
Yeah.
I'd hate to cut into that.
15,182.
Is the total.
So,
So more than,
20% of the Thrive Director is $15,182 and change.
right,
so if
so
you're
we'd be,
talking more than,
we'd be at $4,000, so we have if you're axing the legacy campaign, you've got roughly $1,000-ish left over there.
so the difference between, that 5% delta between 15 and 20% is 3,795.73.
If we all put
Leaving
training so much,
1,300
let's
then.
split that.
So
$500
the original
that's
scenario
more training
with
than
the
just-
Thrive Director at 25% of the time, adding back the 2 electric cars.
Hold on,
Let's
Angela,
just
they're
go to
not paying
1,000
attention.
altogether.
She said.
That takes us down to 2%.
Did you say, I'm sorry, Angela, I made the bad mistake of not listening to you.
The original scenario that you asked for of adding the Thrive Director back at 25%, adding back the 2 electric cars and $2,000 for training is $109,000. It's roughly 2.17%. If I make the change to just
So hold on, that's axing, wait, that's
Just
not,
access
that's,
the legacy.
that's just the legacy and reducing the pooled training. If I reduce the Thrive Director down to 20% of the time, right now it's at 105,000 at 2.09, and if we restore the pooled training up to 4,000, 107, 2.13.
We can plug in
So
her
this- we
computer.
just lost the legacy.
it's just 1,000. I mean, right, and we're just foregoing $1,000 of play money. Play money's a terrible word, but of the difference, right? Because you took basically 4,000 from the legacy campaign,
Right.
put that towards the Thrive Director, left everything else the same, and then just lost that 1,000. I mean, it's. Did you say 107?
107,369.
That's certainly tenable.
So can you explain just how that is, and you said that's 2.1 something?
2.13.
413.
4.3. So in the spreadsheet that we have that had it up 108,574, it says it's a 2.06? So I'm just wondering how, if it's less.
No, it says 2.15.
The rate below percent change to.
I'm giving you tax rate change, not percent change.
So hold on, let's pause. So let's look at
Yes.
scenario
The one next to the yellow
that-
line is the tax rate. Keep going.
Sorry, Jesse?
It says percent change the tax rate, 2.06%.
There's
So
a
that-
there's a budget increase and then there's a percent to tax. rate
Right now,
increase.
the information that I'm giving you is impact to the tax rate.
And that's
So it's
what
not a percentage.
Can you do
Why
what
change
you
it to
just did,
4.15?
Angela, on the, I think you're on the add drop spreadsheet?
Mm-hmm.
If you do that in the scenarios for council tab of that spreadsheet and alter the scenario 1 in 2.15%,
That's just the change.
you know what do you see what I'm saying?
So fucking guys, I'm just giving us a hard time. Did you guys figure that out?
I guess
Well,
I
we'll
don't
think
understand the difference between those two numbers either.
So there's a percentage of overall budget increase number, and then there's a percentage to tax rate increase number. In Winooski, they're very, very closely mirrored because of the way our tax rate lines up with our current budget. That won't always be the case. in the future, we could raise our tax rate by, 3% and only have a 1.5% increase to the overall budget.
So you're saying that 2.06 is the percent change to the budget, not to the tax rate?
The 2.06 is the percent change to the tax rate.
Right, but, and so
Legacy
that's why I'm
campaign.
confused, what, the,
Okay,
2.15
it's
is like
2.04%, 2.13 cents.
thank you. That makes sense to me.
Dollars and cents.
Would you like us to plug in Angela's computer so you can see what she's seeing?
I think everybody's got it conceptualized now.
Yes, I just needed to,
Yeah.
it needed to make sense in my mind that it was, everything was actually a little bit lower than
No,
it was
but
being.
that was a lot quicker than that first time we did the capital budget. That's good. Oh, it's a kind-hearted jab. It was a
I'm
kind-hearted
gonna lean
jab.
back so you can reach over and smack him, alright?
The building was cold, that's
It was
all I'll
very,
say.
very cool.
Yeah, it was.
No, in seriousness though, is everybody, okay, so just
I can
walking
live with
back through it, what we've talked about is removing the legacy campaign
Correct.
and then upping the Thrive Director, and this is using the first green scenario, the 2.15% increase, and using the Thrive Director at 20% general fund. And just from a perspective, 20%'s an easy number to deal with from a functional perspective.
It's all math.
A whole number like that. I'm saying, but that's easier than 18.67.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. That's what I was looking at you. I was looking at you. So that's effectively about a $4,000 difference or shift from the legacy campaign to the Thrive Director position support from the general fund, leaving about $1,000 off that proposal, which puts us at 107 ish on that total number, which leaves us at 2.13 or 2.05. Did you say?
Would,
4%.
2.04. Okay.
but now you've lost, so are you still thinking on that first recommended scenario to
Mhm.
leave in the remainder in the pooled training and the 2 EVs? Or
We're
can
not
we pass that?
touching the EVs. We're not touching the training.
You're leaving
No.
them in there. Yes, that is the scenario you're
Yes,
passing with
that's-
those.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we would be passing, the legacy campaign is removed,
Yep.
and then the Thrive Director's juiced up to 20%. That's
Okay.
the simplest way to say it.
Got it.
How do we feel about that?
I can live with that.
It's less than 2.15%. We went down.
It wasn't
Yeah.
my initial
Yeah.
ask, but
Yeah.
that's good, yes.
Yeah.
We met you somewhere towards the middle. No.
No.
I'm just teasing.
Still a little
Um,
lopsided.
I mean, I think I'm outnumbered is what it comes down to. I don't fully understand what the difference operationally between 15%, 20%, 25%, 33% funded out of the general fund. I don't know how that's actually gonna affect the position. I don't think it
it's
will,
like-
and I don't think it'll affect the rates, to be
I think it's like
completely
Nicole
honest.
said, I think it's more about not affecting the kids on the opposite side by having
Again,
tuitions
I
raised.
don't see that tuition will be raised. I don't think the mission
You're right.
from that department, whether or not, what percentages coming from the general fund is gonna be that rates will raise. I think there will be extra effort put into recruitment, most likely. But that's, I mean, I guess we've gone round and round on that. I think it's on paper.
Yep.
Yeah, I just don't think that necessarily is gonna translate into real life.
I think
Or I don't think you can like say that like, oh, with 20% this will happen, with 15%. I don't think it like really like fleshes out like that in the long run. But I get that it's more of like a show of support.
Precisely.
Yeah, I think it's more for me at least,
Should just
making
don't
the
know.
statement that we strongly support intentional work being done to grow this program without that growth being done at the potential expense of rates rising for families.
Yeah, but I don't think that it has to just be the potential for rates to rise. I think it could be the potential to grow the program too, which I think in turn makes it a more self-sufficient program. And rates rising is inevitably going to happen at some point, right? Like, I mean, we see that, it's reasonable to raise rates across the board, right? So, that's what we're saying with this, with every increase that we offer in a budget, in anything. Right, so I think that's gonna eventually happen, but I don't, it's fine, I can see I can see where it's going, and I'm fine with it. I really love that program. I love everything that they're doing, and I hate being this guy again. It's like, you know, one year it's the senior center, one year it's Thrive. I'm the liaison to the department this time, so I'm a real jerk. But I just don't see, it seems like more of an exercise of like moving numbers around than actually like what will actually happen in that department to me. So I just think that like if that's the way it's going to be, then we keep the impact of the general fund as low as possible, and let a special fund or whatever it's called, let it support itself. But I get that there's risk associated with rates rising. I just think it's I just don't think that risk is necessarily like real and directly related to those numbers shifting back and forth. But that said, here we are. So I'm okay with it.
Well, I'll just say that it appears that there's at least a chance a few of us might be back here next year, and I think this is going to be a topic for discussion again next year. Because here's the deal: if a program can't support itself, it's not an enterprise fund. It's not a special fund. If we're subsidizing off of the general fund, it doesn't count. Like that's not. So it becomes a larger conversation and discussion. I think, from my perspective, I actually agree with everything you said, and I actually generally don't like the thought of spending general fund money on work that's going to be done on a specific program. I don't think that that's the way you do accounting. If it's a special fund, it needs to support itself. I think if it's 20% general fund, you should be expecting that person's doing 20% of general fund work on community programming. But I think we have an interesting case here where I'm hopeful that the program can show efficacy and growth in a way that supports and sustains it. Or I do think next year we're back to having that same conversation of how to more appropriately balance it between the special fund and the general fund. So I guess the argument, while you might not win this year, I think is just, it's put it on all of our radars that it really needs to be something that we watch and take stock in when it comes around next year.
Well, so so what's the message we're sending? Is the message we're sending that 20% of her time needs to be spent doing general fund activities, or is it spend your time growing a program so that when we have this discussion next year, we can continue to back off the general fund support for this program? We
are hearing from staff that they have put this in as essentially an acknowledged, I'll call it a budget transfer, really, is what it feels more like. Like we're doing a general fund budget transfer to support a program.
We're subsidizing the program.
Correct. Versus expecting the person to actually spend that percentage of time in general fund work. Is that accurate? Mm-hmm. And it's not, again, we're doing the best we can and trying to figure out and trying to support programming. It's, I would argue, not best practices, but having it go for this year and coming back and revisiting. Jesse?
So I think what I'm hearing, and Ray, I would welcome your thoughts on what you're hearing from this as well, is yes, we're comfortable subsidizing the program in FY19 at 20%. And yes, we want to see that position really look at how to make Thrive as successful as possible. And hopefully that can be done within the revenues that result from a program that controls its costs and make sure it's still accessible to all. So don't refocus time on something else, but see how effective we can make this program within its existing revenue streams.
Mm-hmm.
Is that?
I'm hearing that. I think just a reminder too that job description does have non-Thrive elements as a component. So I think that heard and understood that working and focusing on Thrive is a priority. It has been with that position, but I do think there is a value. The general fund is buying a value beyond the Thrive program, and I think there are good examples of that throughout. So I'm not advocating for a different number. I'm just calling that job description out that was approved here a couple years back that does very intentionally grow again, I'm not advocating for a number, and I'm hearing the guidance to build that program up as we continue to try to do. But I just want to make sure that that's out there.
Well, so that weakens that concern even more. I mean, that's more favorable towards the argument of supporting it. You know, I think ultimately, eventually it comes back, and if it's not, you know, if we come back next year and they tap $30,000 in reserves, and we've spent $28,000 on the position, or 20% on the position out of general fund, there's a question of, is this actually general fund, right? We just did this with the community center, right? I mean, it wasn't sustainable, so we said, hey, it's not that we're closing the community center, we gotta fold it in and take that bite in the budget. And that's just part of those hard conversations we have. So I guess I just want to bring up that even if it passes this year, I think it's on everybody's radar, collective radar, this conversation and kind of the concerns around it as a future item to monitor really closely and potentially have to reconsider if things don't go the way that we hope they will. Ooh, I think that might be a good silence. Are we feeling good about this? Dude, I'm not gonna hesitate.
Push it.
So how do we feel over there? Do we feel like it's been clearly conveyed, Jesse?
I do. Just because we are talking about both your vote on expenditure budget and a budget to be raised by tax dollars and the warning later in the agenda, I would recommend we take just a 3-minute recess, let Angela and I make sure we have everything correct, print out copies of the warning with that new budget adjusted number in it, and then come back.
So move.
Yeah.
Open it up for
Yeah, let me open it up first for public comment. And I was just thinking in the issuance of time, if we could knock out like certificate of highway mileage. Do you need to be up here for that? Or is there somebody else in the audience that can do highway mileage?
Want to do it too?
We'll take a 3-minute recess. We'll take a 3-minute recess. I saw that face. We're good. So first up, we'll open it up for public comment in regards to the budget. So what we've basically, it sounds like brokered up here is a 2.13% increase from a budgetary standpoint.
Sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah.
The public has
As
spoken.
the public has spoken.
It's unanimous.
That's right. Introduce yourself, Joe Public.
One vote down. All right. Only a couple thousand more to go. Okay, so hearing and seeing done, we will pause for a 3-minute recess. It's 7:24. Let's reconvene at 7:28. our agenda item where we left off. And Jesse was just doing some magic in regards to potential numbers.
Angela.
Angela?
And Angela.
And
so-
Counselor Sweeney has the
Yes.
information
And we have,
for the motion.
oh my goodness, look at this.
Look at that. Oh,
Just in case you wanted to.
yeah, make the motion.
So we have a potential motion guidance on there. So, okay, reiterating our final percentage, just the percentage pieces, we're at 2.13%.
2.13 cents.
2 yes.
0.04%.
Okay, thank you. 2.13 cents, 2.04%.
Percent.
Thank you, Angela. The resulting amount would be a total budget of $6,697,988.77, which from a revenue perspective would require us to raise $5,380,529.13 in taxes. Now, what's the difference? Of course, there's other revenue like fees, pilots that the city receives that's not generated by tax revenue. So we're that $5 billion tax revenue only, and the 6.6 or 6 point almost $7 million represents the total general fund budget. As a reminder to folks, during this budget process, you can also go back and see the special funds and enterprise fund budgets that we also reviewed over the course of the budget process, which is something we did a little differently this year. So that's an interesting watch as well. Those are not wrapped into this total number. Just keep that in mind. This is general fund only. So with that, I'm going to open it up for council for any last questions, concerns. We'll debrief on process. I'd ask folks maybe hold off on their process speeches because I think we're going to come back to that too. Go ahead.
I was gonna give a good process
Oh,
speech.
please do.
No, no, I have a question.
Yeah.
So the other fund budgets that we have seen presented to us throughout the course of when do those get approved by us?
We should
This is a
probably
point of-
technically do like a blanket approval of the.
So on my tracking street, they're on the agenda for next week.
I believe you.
Thank you.
Nice recovery.
Speak now, forever hold your peace. Any questions, comments, concerns from the public? So not a process speech, but just want to give a lot of acknowledgement to staff for all of your really hard work, a lot of difficult discussions, a lot of blood, sweat, tears go into making this budget. It's our job to go out and talk to the community about it and have those conversations. And sometimes people attach our faces to the budget, but make no mistake that it's the people who come to work every day and do such a great job executing the operations of the city that really carry the brunt of this process. And I know really spent a lot of time putting together a thoughtful plan to execute the will of the voters, to try to provide great services and make sure as a community people are excited to live in and that we're looking forward and that we're doing all of the things that people want us to do in as reasonable a fashion as possible. But could not be more proud of all of you and the work that you put into this. It's never a 100% smooth process. That doesn't exist when it comes to the budget, really, nor should it be. It should be a discussion, sometimes an argument, but always has been thoughtful and just incredibly, incredibly appreciative of all the time that you guys spent on that and for helping support a really thoughtful and engaged conversation and taking the time to put together those great presentations and walk folks through things in a way that is easy to understand and accessible to the public. It's I think a unique process that we go through here and one that really benefits folks who take the time to learn about the budget and make it really accessible. So thank you all very much. And for Jesse, for the first year of doing it, bravo, really impressive. And I'm sure we'll have lots of opportunity to kind of go back and talk about what worked well and what didn't, and find new opportunities next year to make it even better.
And really thanks to Angela. She's really the mastermind behind the numbers and keeping us all aligned. And it's it's her success and the rest of the leadership team.
And for this composition of council, this is the last general fund budget we'll all approve together. So thank you to each of you. You know what's really great about Winooski? You talk to reporters, you talk to members of the public. You talk to staff, and you guys really go above and beyond in terms of coming to these meetings prepared to have a engaged conversation and one that you've taken the time to be ready for. So certainly makes my job really easy and makes for a good process for the public that it's such a dedicated group of volunteers that really takes the time to be prepared walking the door. So thank all of you too. And now watch this fail. We'll watch it get voted down after that. No, and hopefully to the voters we'll be talking to a lot over the next couple weeks here as we lead up to town meeting day, but we sure do work hard to keep this an affordable community to live in while also providing the services that everybody cares so much about and that make this a great place to live. So hopefully you'll agree with that premise and vote for me on whatever budget gets approved for town meeting day. And with all that, any other questions, comments, concerns from council? Seeing and hearing none, I would entertain a motion. I would entertain a motion for approval of an FY 2019 budget, including the capital plan to present to voters.
I move we approve a total budget of $6,697,988.77 with $5,380,529.13 to be raised by taxes.
Second.
Motion by Brian Sweeney, second by Nicole. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed, motion carries 5-0. Good job, guys. All right.
Go forward.
All right, item
Thank you,
E.
member of the public.
Yeah.
Approve 2018 town meeting day warning.
So the warning before you now has the articles related to the mayor, the council, the city budget as was just approved in your last vote. It does also include the article about accepting funds from other sources, the bond vote article, as previously talked about and found necessary tonight, and the article previously approved by necessity resolution around the Chittenden County Public Safety Authority.
Okay. Great. Any questions or concerns from council? Fiscal year property taxes. Wait a second. I didn't. Where is? Why am I missing the special item on?
It's right here, it's on the second page.
Oh,
Your, what,
Separate attachment.
oh, separate. Okay. Yep. You're good. Yeah, that's right. You sent out the other one. I'm sorry. I'm looking at the original package. Okay. So with that, I've talked about all those, but remember, folks, in the public, there's going to be 3 items on the ballot, all worthy of voting yes on, but just covered by Jesse there. So any questions, concerns from council? Any questions or concerns from the public? Good. So seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for approval of the the 2018 town meeting day warning.
So moved.
Motion by Brian Corrigan, second by Nicole. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, motion carries. And finally, item F, always an item that
very good.
embroils passion and
So this is an annual certificate that's required by V-Trans certifying our highway mileage. We are not making it, and it is required that the elected body sign off on this annually. We are not recommending any changes be made this year. We do think it's possible that next year we will come to you during the year with some acceptance of private roads that may change this for next year, but this year it's the same as last year.
I always disagree with him. I think our roads are very scenic.
All this budget talk, all this Thrive stuff, and we still don't have a single scenic road.
Not one, not a single one.
Okay.
Just not right.
Any
Definitely see some things, huh?
questions or concerns from council in regards to the 2018 certificate of highway mileage? Any questions or concerns from the public? So seeing and hearing none, I entertain a motion to accept the 2018 certificate of highway mileage. Motion by Eric,
Second.
second by Brian Corrigan. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, motion carries. I have now entertained a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Brian Sweeney, second by Brian Corrigan. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, motion carries.
Good work, everyone.